Hey everybody. I hope that this June 8th of the pretend year 2026 is finding you well. Excuse me, all my hair is falling out. So I just wanted to start back where we left off yesterday. I'm going to continue reading this letter, okay, from a Jewish man named Benjamin Freedman who left World Jewry after he started to see what it was really all about, okay? And I left off yesterday where he was basically kind of making like an analogy, that what was going on in the 1930s in Germany and how the Zionists, excuse me, my eye's been watering for 20 minutes, how the Zionists basically used Germany, played both sides, and that Germany was basically a Christian country and that it was being taken over by communists, and that it was the communists that were being put out. Okay? So, I think I'll go ahead and just read the last couple of sentences of where we were at, and then that way that can kind of catch us up to where we were. And I will be labeling this part 2 so that you can know where we're at with this reading, all right? So, basically where I left off was that if we do not fight this global Zionism, we're going to end up like these other countries. And I have been screaming this for a very long time. We've got Noahide laws already on the books. Like, we've got anti-BDS laws already on the books. Like, you can be boycotted. Your company, say, cannot boycott Israel, or, in certain states, or like, you're not allowed to do business in that state. And I want to say that South Carolina is one of those states. I want to say Florida is one of those states. Go Google it. It's crazy what they're doing. And we have a lot of Christians out here who incorrectly believe that the socio-political state of Israel are the same people from the Bible, and they're not, okay? We've also got a lot of Christians believing other crazy things that they think the Bible says that it does not say, because they are listening to apologists and not textual critiques. But I digress. So, here we go. The same as we in this country are saying today, our turn is going to come soon unless we are strong. Our government is spending $83 or $84 billion for defense. Now, this was in like the 1950s, okay? Defense against whom? Defense against 40,000 little tiny hats in Moscow that took over Russia, and then, in their devious ways, took control of other many countries of the world. And they control all the countries in the world through the banking system. Which is why countries like Libya and Gaddafi were like, over my dead body. And the Zionists were like, well, if that's how you want it, okay. And they sent our military over. And as Hillary Clinton so disgustingly said, we came, we saw, he died. And then laughed like a psychopath. They took Gaddafi out. Libya was a beautiful country. They had free education. They had, pretty sure free healthcare. Their money was backed by gold. Our money is backed by nothing. So I just want people to think about what is really going on in the world right now, because we are at the precipice of, something huge. And a lot of Christian content creators on this app are little by little, slowly but surely, luring you guys back into Torah observance, because they said, you know, Jesus didn't come to do away with the law. He didn't come to abolish it, but to fulfill it. What does the word fulfill mean? Anyways, I digress. Okay. For this country now to be on the verge of a third world war from which we cannot emerge a victor is something that staggers my imagination. I know that nuclear bombs are measured in terms of megatons. A megaton is a term used to describe 1 million tons of TNT. Our nuclear bombs had a capacity of 10 megatons or 10 million tons of TNT when they were first developed. Now, the nuclear bombs that are being developed have a capacity of 200 megatons, and God knows how many megatons the nuclear bombs of the Soviet Union have. What do we face now? If we trigger a world war that may develop into a nuclear war, humanity is finished. And I'm going to stop right there and go ahead and say, I think nukes are a hoax, okay? I don't think that they exist. I think that electronic weaponry exists. If you're aware of Deborah Tavares and her website, stopthecrime.net, you can go and do a lot of research on there, and that will kind of show you this whole story, you know, of Oppenheimer, you know, developing the nuclear. I mean, like, come on. It's a fish story, all right? These videos, like, where they nuked Japan, and yet the camera didn't get destroyed, and the 35 millimeter film or whatever it was didn't get destroyed. It's kind of giving NASA, if you follow me, you know, if you are someone who questions the official narrative about our cosmology and about outer space and things like that, then surely you have to question nukes, dinosaurs, all that kind of stuff. So anyways, but I still think that the weaponry that they have is more dangerous than nukes, because if you go to Deborah Tavares' website, stopthecrime.net, she talks about a document that was supposedly found in an old printer from some office that was getting thrown away, and it was a document called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, and that basically all of the weaponry that they have is invisible. It is frequency technology. It's electrical. It's not TNT. Anyways, but we're going to keep reading. So, why might such a war take place? It will take place as the curtain goes up on Act 3. Act 1 was World War 1. Act 2 was World War 2. Act 3 is going to be World War 3. The tiny hats of the world, the Zionists and their co-religionists, which are all these Christians that think that they're God's chosen. Okay, if you're one of those people, wake up. Their co-religionists everywhere are determined that they are going to again use the United States to help them permanently retain Palestine as their foothold for their world government. That is just as true as I am standing here. Not alone have I read it, but many here have also read it, and it is known all over the world. Isn't that fascinating? That this man who was a defector, I guess, from World Tiny Hattery, exposed this. Excuse me. I just have to move this. I have to get comfortable. I don't know why I didn't do this before I started filming. Okay. So this book was written in the 60s, the 50s or the 60s, and what he was saying in this book has, like, basically already happened. I mean, the Zionists have completely destroyed Palestine. I mean, you can go and look at pictures from it back, like, in the 50s, 60s, 70s. It was a really nice place, and now it is a pile of rubble. All right. So he says here, what are we going to do? The life you save may be your son's. Your boys may be on their way to that war tonight, and you don't know it any more than you knew that in 1916 in London, the Zionists made a deal with the British War Cabinet to send your sons to war in Europe. Did you know it at that time? Not a person in the United States knew it. You weren't permitted to know it. Who knew it? President Wilson knew it. Colonel House knew it. Other insiders knew it. Did I know it? And this is, again, Mr. Freedman saying that he knew it. I had a pretty good idea of what was going on. I was liaison to Henry Morgenthau Sr. in the 1912 campaign when President Wilson was elected, and there was talk around the office there. I was confidential man to Henry Morgenthau Sr., who was chairman of the finance committee, and I was liaison between him and Rollo Wells, the treasurer. So I sat in these meetings with President Wilson at the head of the table and all the others, and I heard them drum into President Wilson's brain the graduated income tax and what has become the Federal Reserve. And I heard them indoctrinate him with the Zionist movement, which, look at President Trump. He is Netanyahu's butt boy at this point, and a lot of people that voted for him are now having buyer's remorse. Like I said in my last video, I've never voted a day in my life because I think it's an exercise in futility, and I also am not giving my consent to be ruled over by these baby eaters and weirdos, okay? I'm not doing it. Justice Brandeis and President Wilson were just as close as the two fingers on this hand. President Woodrow Wilson was just as incompetent when it came to determining what was going on as a newborn baby. That is how they got us into World War I. While we all slept, they sent our boys over there to be slaughtered. For what? So the tiny cats can have Palestine as their commonwealth? They fooled you so much that you don't know whether you're coming or going, and that still stands true today. There are so many people that think that the Zionist state of Israel are the people from the Old Testament. Nothing could be further from the truth. Now, any judge, when he charges a jury, says, gentlemen, any witness who you find has told a single lie, you can disregard all his testimony. I don't know what state you come from, but in New York State, that is the way a judge addresses a jury. If that witness told one lie, disregard his testimony. What are the facts about the tiny hats? He says, I call them Jews to you because they are known as Jews. He himself doesn't call them Jews. He refers to them as so-called Jews because he knows what they are. The Eastern European Jews, who form 92% of the world's population of those people who call themselves Jews, were originally Khazars. And I'm going to stop right there and suggest another book here. Let me just called The 13th Tribe by Arthur Kessler, another Jewish man who exposes, God's chosen. The whole world's under a spell, okay? And it's time that everybody wake the fuck up. Pardon my French. Okay. They were a warlike tribe who lived deep in the heart of Asia. And they were so warlike that even the Asiatics drove them out of Asia into Eastern Europe. They were kicked out of like 109 countries and kingdoms going back like 1,000 years, I think. So that should tell you something. The Khazar kingdom, hold on. They set up a large Khazar kingdom of 800,000 square miles. At the time, Russia did not exist, nor did any other European countries. The Khazar kingdom was the biggest country in all of Europe. So big and so powerful that when other monarchs wanted to go to war, the Khazars would lend them 40,000 soldiers. That's how big and powerful they were. They were phallic worshippers, which I think you can see who rules over us. The phallic worshippers still today. The whatever monument that is in Washington, D.C. It's a giant phallic symbol, which is filthy, and I do not want to go into the details of that now, but that was their religion. It was also the religion of many other pagans and barbarians elsewhere in the world. The Khazar king became so disgusted with the degeneracy of his kingdom that he decided to adopt a so-called monotheistic faith, which is not really monotheistic, okay? Either Christianity, Islam, or what is known today as Judaism, which is really Talmudism. By spinning a top and calling out eeny, meeny, miny, mo, he picked out so-called Judaism, and that became the state religion. He sent down to the Talmudic schools of Pumbedita and Sura and brought up thousands of rabbis and opened up synagogues and schools, and his people became what we call the Jews. There wasn't one of them who had an ancestor who ever put a toe in the Holy Land. Not only in Old Testament history, but back to the beginning of time. Not one of them. And yet they come to the Christians and ask us to support their armed insurrections in Palestine by saying, you want to help repatriate God's chosen people to their promised land, their ancestral home, don't you? It's your Christian duty. We gave you one of our boys as your Lord and Savior. You now go to church on Sunday and you kneel and you worship a Jew, and we're Jews. But they are pagan Khazars who were converted just the same as the Irish were converted to Catholicism. It is as ridiculous to call them people of the Holy Land as it would be to call the 54 million Chinese Muslims Arabs. Muhammad only died in 620 AD, and since then, 54 million Chinese have accepted Islam as their religious belief. Now imagine in China, 2,000 miles away from Arabia, from Mecca, and Muhammad's birthplace, imagine if the 54 million Chinese decided to call themselves Arabs. You would say they were lunatics. Anyone who believes that those 54 million Chinese are Arabs must be crazy. All they did was adopt as a religious faith a belief that had its origin in Mecca in Arabia. The same as the Irish. When the Irish became Christians or Catholics, nobody dumped them in the ocean and imported to the Holy Land a new crop of inhabitants. They hadn't become a different people. They were the same people. They had just accepted Catholicism as their religious faith. These Khazars, these pagans, these Asiatics, these Turco-Finns were a Mongoloid race who were forced out of Asia into Eastern Europe. Because their king took the Talmudic faith, they had no choice in the matter, just the same as in Spain. If the king was Catholic, everybody had to be a Catholic. If not, you had to get out of Spain. So the Khazars became what we call today Jews. Now imagine how silly it was for the great Christian countries of the world to say, we're going to use our power and prestige to repatriate God's chosen people to their ancestral homeland, their promised land. Could there be a bigger lie than that? Because they control the newspapers, the magazines, the radio, the television, the book publishing business, and because they have the ministries in the pulpit and the politicians on the soapboxes talking the same language. It is not too surprising that you believe that lie. You'd believe black is white if you heard it often enough. You wouldn't call black black anymore. You'd start to call black white, and nobody could blame you. That is one of the great lies of history. It is the foundation of all the misery that has befallen the world. Do you know what tiny hats do on the Day of Atonement that you think is so sacred to them? I was one of them. This is not hearsay. I am not here to be a rabble-rouser. I'm here to give you facts. When, on the Day of Atonement, you walk into a synagogue, you stand up for the very first prayer that you recite. Is the only prayer for which you stand. You repeat 3 times a short prayer called the Kol Nidr. In that prayer, you enter into an agreement with God Almighty that any oath, vow, or pledge that you make during, excuse me while I turn the page, during the next 12 months shall be null and void. The oath shall not be an oath. The vow shall not be a vow. The pledge shall not be a pledge. So basically, they're doing a prayer that is pretty much giving them a pass to lie to everyone. That every oath that they make, that every pledge that they take, that it technically is null and void. It's like crossing your fingers behind your back and saying, I promise. What the fuck? Okay, the oath shall not be an oath. The vow shall not be a vow. The pledge shall not be a pledge. They shall have no force or effect. And further, the Talmud teaches whenever you take an oath, vow, or pledge, you are to remember the Kol Nighter prayer that you recited on the Day of Atonement, and you are exempted from fulfilling them. How much can you depend on their loyalty? You can depend upon their loyalty as much as the Germans depended on it in 1916. We are going to suffer the same fate as Germany suffered, and for the same reason. That's deep. That is really deep. This guy is exposing this, okay? Now, I don't want people to get this confused, because I have said for a long time that the people in Israel are not the people of the Old Testament. Now, that does not negate, yes, these people actually worship, they worship a form of Satan, okay? They practice, there are all different forms of Satanism. Yahweh is the devil. All right. This is addressed to 960 Park Avenue, New York City, October 10th, 1954. It is dated special delivery to Dr. David Goldstein, LLD, Astor Post Office Station, Boston, Massachusetts. My dear Mr. Goldstein, your very outstanding achievements as a convert to Catholicism impress me as without a comparable parallel in modern history. Your devotion to the doctrine and the dogmas of the Roman Catholic Church defy any attempt at description by me, only with words. Words fail me for that. Also, I find it very interesting that many of these so-called Jews will, like I said, like he said here in this book, they will take oaths that they don't mean. So they will convert to religions that they don't believe in, like it seems like this Mr. Goldstein had converted to Catholicism. Y'all have to remember there's nothing new under the sun, okay? So just like the Jews in the New Testament worked together with Rome to kill Jesus, it's all going to happen again, and the Noahide laws are incoming, and people like Kay Podgy and Aaron Abke are leading you into Torah keeping. That's not going to save you. It's most certainly not. All right, now let's see what this book says here. This letter, excuse me. All right. Your very outstanding achievements as a convert to Catholicism impress me as without a comparable parallel in modern history. Your devotion to the doctrine and dogmas of Roman Catholicism Church defy any attempt at description by me, only with words. Words fail me for that. As a vigorous protagonist, preserving so persistently and propagating the principles of the Roman Catholic Church, its purposes, its policies, its programs, your dauntless determination is the inspiration for countless others who courageously seek to follow in your footsteps. Y'all, seek truth. Don't seek to follow a dogma or a religion. Search for the truth, okay? People like Kay Podgy out here are making money hand over fist on YouTube by claiming to be an ex-witch that somehow gives her magical authority now that she's reading the Bible. She can tell you what it means. No. Okay. In view of this fact, it requires great courage for me to write to you as I'm about to do, So I pray when you receive this communication from me, you will try to keep in mind Galatians 4:16. Am I therefore your enemy because I tell you the truth? This is one of my favorite Bible verses that I have quoted to people several times because this has happened to me so many times. I just will straight up tell somebody the truth and they freaking hate me for it. People don't know what to do with the truth, and they're not interested in the truth. They're interested in having their beliefs co-signed, or what they already think and believe. They want it affirmed. They're not interested in actually looking into what is true. Okay, this is why I'm no longer a professing Christian, because I don't find it to be true anymore. It's just nonsense to me. Now, I'm not saying I deny Christ. No, I do not. But the religion of Christianity, I do not subscribe to any longer. Nevertheless, let me get back to reading. In view of the... Okay. Am I therefore become your enemy because I tell you the truth? I hope you will so favor me. It is truly a source of great pleasure and genuine gratification to meet you at long last, although of necessity by correspondence. It is quite a disappointment for me to make your acquaintance in this manner. It would now afford me a far greater pleasure and a great privilege also if instead I could greet you on this occasion in person. Our very good mutual friend has for long been planning a meeting with you in person for me. I still wish to do that. I look forward with pleasant anticipation to doing this in the not too distant future at a time agreeable with you. You will discover in the contents of this letter long valid evidence for the urgency on my part to communicate with you without further delay. You will further discover this urgency reflected in the present gravity of the crisis, which now jeopardizes an uninterrupted continuance of the Christian faith in its long struggle with the world's most effective spiritual and social force and the divine mission of promoting the welfare of all mankind without regard for their diversified races, religions, and nationalities. Your most recent article, coming to my attention, appeared in the September issue of the APJ Bulletin, the official publication of the organization calling themselves the Archon Fraternity of Prayer for Peace and Goodwill to Israel. The Archon Fraternity of Prayer for Peace and Goodwill to Israel? The Archon Fraternity? What? Okay, I'm going to have to dig a little deeper into this after I'm done reading this here. Okay, the headline of your article, News and Views of the Schmooze. And the purpose of the organization stated in the masthead of the publication, to promote interest in the apostolate to Israel, prompts me to take father time by his forelock and promptly offer my comments. I beg your indulgence accordingly. It is with reluctance that I place my comments in letter form. I hesitated to do so, but I find it the only expedient thing to do under the circumstances. I beg to submit them to you without reservations of any nature for your immediate and earnest I beg to submit them to you now without reservations of any nature for your immediate and earnest consideration. It is my very sincere wish that you accept them in the friendly spirit in which they are submitted. It is also my hope that you will give your consideration to them and favor me with your early reply in the same friendly spirit, for which I thank you in advance. In the best interests of that worthy objective to which you are continuing to dedicate the years ahead of you have so diligently done for many past decades, I most respectfully and sincerely urge you to analyze and to study carefully the data submitted to you here. I suggest also that you take whatever steps you consider appropriate and necessary as a result of your conclusions. In the invisible and intangible ideological war being waged in defense of the great Christian heritage against its dedicated enemies, your positive attitude is vital to victory. Your passive attitude will make a negative contribution to the total effort. You assuredly subscribe fully to that sound and sensible sentiment that it better to light one candle than to sit in darkness. My solitary attempts to date to give light to them that sit in darkness and in the shadow may prove no more successful with you now than they have in so many other instances where I have failed during the past 30 years. In your case, I feel rather optimistic at the moment. Although not completely in vain, I still live in the hope that one day one of these candles will burst into flame like a long smoldering spark and start a conflagration that will sweep across the nation like a prairie fire and illuminate vast new horizons for the first time. That unyielding hope is the source of the courage which aids me in my struggle against the great odds to which I am subjected for obvious reasons. It has been correctly contended for thousands of years that in the end truth always prevails. We all realize that truth in action can prove itself a dynamic power of unlimited force, but alas, truth has no self-starter. Truth, a little push to overcome its inertia. Without that start, truth will stand still and will never arrive at its intended destination. Truth has often died aborting for that most logical reason. Your help in this respect will prove of great value. On the other hand, truth has many times been completely blacked out by repeating contradictory and conflicting untruths over and over again and again and again. The world's recent history supplies sober testimony of the dangers to civilization inherent in that technique. He's referring to, I'm pretty sure, the communist method of repeating a lie over and over and over and over and over again through the use of the media until people believe it. So he says that form of treason to truth is treachery to mankind. You must be very careful, my dear Dr. Goldstein, not to become unwittingly one of the many accessories before and after the fact who have appeared upon the scene of public affairs in recent years. Whether unwittingly, unwillingly, or unintentionally, many of history's most noted characters have misrepresented the truth to the world that they have been so believed that it puzzles our generation. As recently as 1492, the world was misrepresented as flat by the best alleged authorities on the subject. And see how brainwashed this guy is? He literally, this is what is crazy about truth, is that, nobody's got a monopoly on it. That's for damn sure. And I don't know how he thinks that Christopher Columbus was able to prove that the earth is not a flat stationary plane, but whatever. There are countless similar other instances in the history of the world. So I don't think his example was as good as he thought. I have a hair sticking up. Whatever. Anyways, whether these alleged authorities were guilty of ignorance or indifference is here beside the point. I think indifference is probably the more correct assumption. It is not important now. They were either totally ignorant of the facts or they knew the facts but chose to remain silent on the subject for reasons undisclosed by history. A duplication of this situation exists today with respect to the crisis which confronts the Christian faith. It is a vital factor today in the struggle for survival or the eventual surrender of the Christian faith to its enemies. The time in which we are living appears to be the 0 hour for the Christian faith. As you have observed, no institution in our modern society can long survive if its structure is not from its start erected upon the foundation of truth. The Christian faith was first erected upon a very solid foundation of truth by its founder. To survive it must remain so. The deterioration, the disintegration, and the destruction of the structure of the Christian faith today will be accelerated in direct ratio to the extent that misrepresentation and distortion of the truth become the substitutes of truth. Truth is an absolute quality. Truth can never be relative. There can be no degrees to truth. Truth either exists or it doesn't exist. To be half true is as incredible as to be half honest or to be half loyal. And I've always said this, there is no your truth, my truth. There is only the simple objective truth. There is only, one objective reality. Now, can two things be true at once? Sure. But that is not what we're talking about here. We are talking about absolute truths, okay? So he continues on. As you have undoubtedly also learned, my dear Dr. Goldstein, in their attempt to do an ounce of good in one direction, many well-intentioned persons do a ton of harm in another direction. We all learn that lesson sooner or later in life. We all learn that lesson sooner or later in life. Today finds you dedicating your unceasing efforts and your untiring energy to the task of bringing so-called or self-styled Jews into the Roman Catholic Church as converts. It must recall to you many times the day so many years ago when you embraced Catholicism yourself as a convert. More power to you and the best of luck. May your efforts be rewarded with great success. Without you becoming aware of the fact, the methods you employ contribute in no small degree to dilution of the devotion of countless Christians for their Christian faith. For each ounce of so-called good you do, for each ounce of so-called good you accomplish by conversion of so-called or self-styled Jews to the Christian faith, at the time you do a ton of harm in another direction by diluting the devotion of countless Christians for their Christian faith. This bold conclusion on my part is asserted by me with the firm and fair conviction that the facts will support my contention. In addition, it is a well-known fact that many counterfeit recent conversions reveal that conversions have often proved to be but infiltrations by latent traitors with treasonable intentions. I knew he was going to get around to this. I knew this is where he had to be going with it, because otherwise I was going to have to stop and caveat this with these are false converts, they're infiltrators. And this is what has happened also in the Christian church, which is why I no longer wish to be a part of it, because it has been so infiltrated with Freemasons, Zionists pretending to be Christians, cosplaying, because they do that whatever little prayer they say once a year. Anyways, the attitudes you express today and your continued activity in this work require possible revision in the light of the facts submitted to you in this letter. Your present philosophy and theology on this subject seriously merit, without any delay, reconsideration on your part. What you say or write may greatly influence a boom or bust for the Christian faith in the very near future, far beyond your ability to accurately evaluate sitting in your high white ivory tower. The Christians implicitly believe whatever you write. So do the so-called or self-styled Jews whom you seek to convert. This influence you wield can become a danger. I must call it to your attention. Your reaction to the facts called to your attention in this letter can prove to be one of the most crucial verdicts ever reached, bearing upon the security of the Christian faith in recent centuries. In keeping with this great responsibility, I sincerely recommend this sentiment to you, hoping that you will earnestly study the contents of this letter from its first word to its very last word. All who know you well are in the fortunate position to know how close this subject is to your heart. By your loyalty to the high ideals you have observed during the many years you have labored so valiantly on behalf of the Christian faith, have earned the admiration you enjoy. The Christian faith you choose of your own will in the prime of life is very proud of you in more ways than as a convert. Regardless of anyone, anywhere, and any time in this whole wide world may say to the contrary, events of recent years everywhere established beyond any question of a doubt that the Christian faith today stands with one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel, figuratively speaking, of course. Only those who think otherwise, who deliberately shut their eyes to realities, or who do not choose to see even with their eyes wide open. I believe you to be too realistic to indulge yourself in the futile folly of fooling yourself. Now, a lot of people don't. And I think that, let's see. Okay, I'm going to read a little bit, and I'm going to try to keep these at about 45 minutes long. It is clear that the Christian faith today stands at the crossroads of its destiny. The divine and sacred mission of the Christian faith is in jeopardy today to a degree never witnessed before in its long almost history of almost 2,000 years. The Christian faith needs loyal friends now as never before. I somehow feel that you can always be counted upon as one of its loyal friends. You cannot oversimplify the present predicament of the Christian faith. The problem it faces is too self-evident to make. It is in critical situation. When the day arrives that Christians can no longer profess their Christian faith as they profess it today in the free world, the Christian faith will have seen the beginning of its last days. What already applies to 50% of the world's total population can shortly equally apply to 100% of the world's total population. It is highly conceivable, judging from present trends, the malignant character of this malady is just as progressive as cancer. It will surely prove as fatal also, unless steps are taken now to reverse its course. What is now being done toward arresting its progress or reversing this trend? My dear Mr. Goldstein, can you recall the name of the philosopher who was quoted as saying that nothing in this world is permanent except change? That philosophy must be applied to the Christian faith also. The $64 question remains whether the change will be for the better or for the worse. The problem is that simple. If the present trend continues for another 37 years in the same direction and at the same rate traveled for the past 37 years, the Christian faith, as it is professed today by Christians, will have disappeared from the face of the earth. In what form or by what instrumentality the mission of Jesus Christ will thereupon and thereafter continue to make itself manifest here on earth as is unpredictable as it is inevitable. In the existing crisis, it is neither logical nor realistic to drive Christians out of the Christian fold in relatively large numbers for the dubious advantage to be obtained by bringing a comparatively small number of so-called or self-styled Jews into the Christian fold. It is useless to try to deny the fact that today finds the Christian faith on the defensive throughout the world. This realization staggers the imagination of the few Christians who understand the situation. And I think we're still in that same boat today. Few, true, what is true Christianity? I think that's probably another video that maybe I should actually do. But, there was a solidarity in, years gone by in that, Europe, all of Europe, all of Christendom was a cohesive, good, and moral society based on, it was a high trust society based on, people having respect and love for their fellow man. And now, look what has happened. These tiny hats have totally taken over the world, you guys. Okay, so I think I'm gonna stop there because I don't want to make these videos, like I said. I don't want to make them so long that everyone's bored to tears. But it's called Facts Are Facts, and it is written by a former, well, I guess he was, what even is a Jew anymore, right? Let's see. Anyways, it says here on the back of this book that the word Jew did not occur anywhere in the English language until the 18th century. So, what does that mean for the Bible? It says Jesus referred to himself as a Judean. The modern day Jews were historically Khazars, a Mongolian Nordic tribe who roamed northern Europe. And that is facts. That's definitely facts. Anyways, I am going to let you all go and hope that you have a blessed day. And I hope that you find the truth, because the truth truly does set you free. For real, for real. Mwah. Please hit the subscribe button. Please like the video and follow for more. readings of books, rants on truth, exposing of BS, and so on and so forth. Bye, you guys.